So, Ray's just pressed carriage return on the recording for this week's AI in Education podcast. I hope everybody's listening in and had a nice week. We've had quite a nice week, Ray, at the AI tour in Sydney. Did you have fun?
I did. I had an amazing week last week at lots of events with lots of educators. The AI Summit, the Microsoft AI Summit, which was a big event. I mean, there were, 5,000 people in the auditorium,
8,000 altogether,
all
apparently.
geeking out on listening to
8,000 altogether.
Wow. Well, that's rock concert things. And there was almost a bit of a buzz about it. But I came away thinking, there is so much I need to keep up with.
I know. And the only way that everybody can keep up with it is listening to the AI in Education podcast and listen to the news episode, which we've got this week, Ray. What have you been doing with AI this week?
Well done, Dan. Well done. I've been doing a whole load of things. So let me just quickly run through some of the things I've done. I created an agent to help people work out what it is and isn't okay to put into an AI system. So if you think, can I put our marketing material in there for it to rewrite it? Or can I put my curriculum documents? Or can I put my business plan? So I created an AI agent to do that. And I found it was very clunky. That was with ChatGPT. So then I used Claude to rewrite the instructions for the agent. And it did a really good job. And now I've got quite a chatty little agent that can be used by people. So I did that. I did a Where's Wally. Do you remember Where's Wally, Dan? Or Where's Waldo, if you're in America? I did a Where's Wally, but here's what I did. If you go to Reddit, every university has got a Reddit page. And so what I did was I asked AI to go and read the Reddit page to find out what students were asking about.
Wow.
And then turn that into a Where's Wally and hiding on a map of the campus the different issues. I think it's interesting because it's how do we take information that's available in a conventional way and make it available to people who want to look at it differently. I did that. I had 5 hours of audio that I wanted to transcribe, and none of the standard services would take a 5-hour file. So I used AI to help me cut the file up and then transcribe it. And I had my first experiences down with Copilot Cowork. So that's the version of Copilot that does things. It's not just chatty man, it's doing person. So it would go off and do things. And I know you've been talking about using it over the last few weeks, but I had my first experience this week.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? And I think this is why sharing these experiences are really good. I spend time in the AIs that I use, because we were out quite a lot last week. We had the Anglican Schools Conference on Monday. Both of us were out there doing that. I was at the school, Oak Hill College, shout out to that team, on the Tuesday morning with the entire staff doing their AI day, because it's the start of the term in New South Wales. It's just really interesting to have those conversations. And then we were in the AI tour, and we had Catholic education in the office on Tuesday afternoon, and then the AI tour and the Elevate tour on Wednesdays. There's a lot going on. So I missed a lot of normal, regular meetings. So I was using Copilot to just check in on meetings that I'd missed, any urgent things that I need to catch up on, because I wanted to decompress on Friday, but rather than going through everything, I got Copilot to look through all my emails, look through all my meetings. Was there anything urgent that I missed, which is good.
So let me ask you a question, Dan, because it is now possible to have your AI avatar go to meetings for you.
Yeah.
So you didn't quite do that, but you kind of I didn't go to the meeting, but I used AI, effectively went to the meeting for you and told you what went on and gave you the summaries. So how do you feel about doing that as a more regular habit?
That's interesting. I've seen quite a lot of that this week. I don't know. I don't feel that there'd be integrity in a meeting. I understand. To be fair, the note-taking side of things, very good. I like that, but I like the way that it is something that you're not really interacting with to a certain extent. You can, with, say, Copilot in meetings and Teams, you can talk about the sentiment of the meeting, but in terms of an actual somebody being sent there to listen in, I think that's here we go again, anthropomorphizing it a little bit more. I'd rather feel that like I'm not in the meeting and it'll report back for me.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I was doing co-work as well. I think the key with AI is finding out the use cases, isn't it? I was sitting there, I was going, oh no, I've got a lot to do. I was doing a lot with work, and it was Anzac weekend here, and I was trying to do all this stuff yesterday, catching up on work. And I thought, oh, I can just set co-work to go off and do something for me. Because one of the things I thought I've got to do with my academic research is look at policy across the country. So I thought, well, I'd set it up to just have a look and get me some links for policy, just to save me going into Google, doing all that. And it's when you come across those moments that you can set it up and get going and think about things, go off and do a task. So I did that, and it was great. Some of the stuff came back wasn't great, and it was missing some context, but it was a great start of 10, and it just saved me a whole heap of time, because I felt as if I felt as if my intern was going off doing something while I was doing stuff that I needed to do there and then. Yeah, a couple of good uses of AI this week for me, I think.
Excellent. So Dan, this week is a news and research episode. So let's get to some news and let's get to some research.
Right. A lot of people have been talking about this, and I really want to pick your brains, because I know you were one of the authors and connectors in this entire thing. Now, we've all heard of the Dartmouth project that AI was bandied about in the 50s, Davos, the Manhattan Project. But what we've heard about now is the Castlereagh Statement. Now, I've seen this a lot on social. I've read a little bit into it, but I think we really need to unpack that a bit, because everybody was at this event. Tell us more about how it came about and what it actually contains.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, Castlereagh Statement. The name Castlereagh comes from the street on which we had the meeting. It got together last October. So I was invited to participate, and there was a really interesting group of people that were participating from all across education. And the whole point of the conversation was, what are the implications for the education system now that AI is here? Because it's changed a whole lot of things. So 3 people, all of whom actually we've had on the podcast before, brought this group together. So Jason Lodge from UQ, Danny Liu from University of Sydney, and Katie Ford, your colleague from Microsoft, they had the idea to bring a group together. And so they then got a group of, I think, nearly 100 people together, all into a room at the same time. And it had people from schools, it had people from vocational education, higher education, it had people from the education policy world, from government agencies, and from other associated organizations, which I think is why I got an invite. And so we talked throughout the whole day about, well, what are the implications of AI in education, and what is it that the education system might need to change in order to cope with the change that's going on. And eventually, out of that work came a draft of the Castlereagh Statement. So the Castlereagh Statement it's been countersigned by 71 people. So on behalf of their organizations. So I'm a signatory to the Castlereagh Statement, and so are a lot of other organizations. And do you know what, Dan, I thought was fascinating? Over a quarter of the signatories.
I saw that when I was looking at the list. I was like, wow. So when you talk about the statements, the Castlereagh Statement, so obviously we've got all these policies, we talked about before, the study buddy influencer frameworks and the generative AI education framework and then individual things at the state level. What does a statement mean?
Yeah.
What does it do?
Well, it's really a conclusion of a discussion that says, the education and training system isn't really ready for both the scale and the speed of change that's happening by AI. And that isn't just about the things that we see immediately, like, the assessment system has to change. It's also a deep discussion about what is the purpose. Because if the purpose of education is to load you up as a fact machine, and AI can be a better fact machine, what's the point of getting you to remember all of this stuff? What are the skills that you really do need? And so the statement kind of boils it down to 3 really clear goals. What is it that we value in human learners and educators? What does a lifelong learning pathway look like? Because at the moment, there's a handoff between sectors, and almost graduation is great, good job, you finished learning, now go out into the world. And then when you think about from an equity point of view, how does every Australian get to use AI confidently? How do they become critical users? How do they become responsible users? So there are 6 principles around things like assessment reform, empowering teachers, curriculum design, and then it then starts to set out. Now, I'd say starts to set out a action plan for what to do about
So
this.
there's an action plan coming out at the end of this where the same so people can get together to focus on those pillars that have come up in there. Got you.
So my perspective is there isn't an action plan. There is a discussion about some of the issues. What is
Mm,
needed next is an action plan for each of the sectors, because each sector will do it differently. And so there are some groups now starting to form around, okay, if we agree with all of this and we can see it in the totality, what does the school sector need to do? What does the
yeah,
tertiary sector need to do? What the universities need to do? And you can get that micro down to what does the assessment system need to do? But fundamentally, at the bottom of it is AI is supporting learning, and learning is done by humans.
well, what would be sad if it doesn't happen would be if you get all of those minds together, you come up with all of these ideas and philosophy about these things, but then if something doesn't happen, I suppose, is the danger, right? So hopefully it does.
Yeah, that's exactly the risk that I think we all identified is, great, we've had this great discussion, we've pontificated and opinionated, but what then actually has to happen? And that's the challenge that we have. Often we can understand there's a problem, but what do we do? And so that next stage, getting together the sector groups
Yeah,
and knowing what to do. But look, I think from a listener's perspective, it's a great read to understand a couple of things. One is to see how in alignment your perspective is about education. So, for example, it very, very clearly says humans are at the center of education and should continue to be. Now, I suspect most listeners to the
mm,
podcast would agree with that, but there might be some that disagree. And there's certainly some system changes that seem to be going in the other direction. So I think it's good to be able to look at that and say, okay, well, here's what a range of voices has to say about the
yeah.
future. And no mean feat bringing together 71 organizations to put their signature to
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
a
So let's
paper
see
like
what
this.
happens next to that, and let's make sure that we do something to drive that narrative as well, and whatever we can do from the pod to share some of those stories, the better. So we got other news those happened, and I think you put in the notes here one of your favorite artists here, Bob Dylan, saying times are changing. So the first one you've picked up here is about California schools.
Yeah. So, Dan, there's a bunch of things together that I think create a signal. So let's talk about them all together, because, yeah, things are changing and it's easy to see individual things. But hey, let me talk to you about 4 things that are changing, and let's see if there's a theme. So the first thing is in California. Now, Dan, we're going to lose some listeners from the YouTube version of this podcast, because in California's schools, they have now introduced new legislation starting a little bit later this year about curbs on technology. So this is in the Los Angeles school district, so
Mm.
a big public school system in the US. And they are bringing in screen
Wow.
time limits. They are bringing in blocking access to their devices during recess
Right.
and lunch
Interesting.
breaks in the elementary and the middle schools. I think that's great, isn't it? You got to talk to each other. You can't just
Yeah.
stare at a
Well.
screen. They are also, and this one I think is contentious, they're blocking YouTube on all school supplied
Yeah,
devices.
yeah. There's a, this is wandering into a lot of territory familiar with in Australia with the social media bans and all that discussion around YouTube.
Yeah, so they'd already banned
Mm,
mobile phones in the classroom from
mm,
the beginning of this year. But look, the YouTube one I think is interesting, because YouTube is the number one learning
mm.
platform in the
Yeah,
world, I think. Because if you want to learn how to repair a plug or retile a
mm,
bathroom or fix your bike,
yeah. Or put a GIF for the
you go to
podcast
YouTube.
on TikTok, like I had to yesterday, which I couldn't work out. Like anyway, it's quite straightforward, but yeah, it's easier to look for YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's been a trend of that, do we want students to have access to
Mm,
technology all day? So there's one. Here's a second one. At the other end of the scale, Yale. Yale, there's been a call to ban electronic devices in Yale. So
okay, wow.
it's funny. The story went across my timeline on social media
Mm,
and I didn't catch it. And then I thought, right, let me go back and find it. So I went back and did a Google search. And the first result I got was a letter to the Yale Daily News called "Take Our Computers Away for Our Own Stake." And it was a student saying that Yale
Really?
needed to ban computer use in the classroom. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And then, Dan, it was from 17 years ago.
Oh, dear.
And then the next thing I came across with the same search was the Poorview Center for Teacher and Learning at Yale. And it was some research they'd done about the impact of technology in the classroom. And it said, some studies show that limiting device use increases student participation and assessment performance. However, other research shows device restrictions alone do not guarantee better learning outcomes. So I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. That's a very different story to they're banning all the devices. But then I found the actual story that it came from. So the TES reported there was a Yale committee on trust in higher education, and they got 10 academics together. They made 20 recommendations, and one of them, and it was the shortest one in the list, was in order to help students pay attention, make no phones, laptops, or tablets the default in the classroom. Which is weird, because the last time we talked about Yale, Dan, was when they announced a $150 million
right.
AI plan.
Yeah, where they were going to put in, it was OpenAI, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So now we've got two things going on. We've got schools actually banning technology use and limiting screen time. We've got a university having the discussion. It's not Yale calling for a ban. It's a group of professors that said, what 20 things should we do?
And it seems that the AI narrative is because of the fact that it isn't that well researched in a lot of areas at the minute. That narrative is definitely pushing back on technology use, and people who have had that view in public discourse think, well, maybe all technology has got this issue, and you know where we are with Facebook. It's sort of jumping onto that kind of rhetoric now, isn't it? So AI is sort of accelerating this discerning use of technology.
Okay, Dan. So that's one side of the coin, those two things. Let me bring you to the other side of the coin, because in the last couple of weeks, the Khan TED Institute has been announced. So this is the TED conference people and Khan Academy and ETS, which is an edtech company, have announced the Khan TED Institute as a new approach to higher education. So what they said was, AI is already transforming how we work, collaborate, and solve problems. It's raising new questions about what people need to learn and how they demonstrate what they can do. So their goal is create accessible, high quality education, accessible to as many people as possible, and focus on what they can learn to do rather than how long they spent in the classroom. I don't know if you know, the US education system in higher education is built entirely around the number of hours that you spend in the classroom.
And this has got a whole heap of corporate partners as well, like Google, Microsoft, Accenture, McKinsey, Replit, all of those, right?
Yeah, so it's then really interesting because it's then starting to say, okay, well, how do we get students to demonstrate mastery? And how do we make sure that they're learning the right things for the world ahead? And I suppose that's where the corporate people come in, because yes, there are, what would we say, core skills, the 21st century skills, but there's also the technical skills. And maybe it's the corporates are better positioned to be able to espouse for the technical skills, in the same way that if we teach engineering, it's done in partnership with the engineering institutes in the country, or doctors. It's done in partnership with the medical association. So I suppose that's the same. And I guess we're seeing more and more businesses becoming digital businesses.
There's a couple of things as well coming up now in K-12 where you've got AI-led school systems happening, right?
Alpha schools.
I was going to mention Alpha schools, but Alpha schools, we should speak to a few people from Alpha schools at some stage. But you picked up an article here about the world's first AI-led university.
This is interesting as well. So this is out of London. So what they announced was the London School of Innovation. It's now been approved by the regulators in the UK to become a university. So pretty much anywhere in the world, you're not allowed to call something a university because it's a regulated phrase, just like doctor is.
There's a lot of universities out there that are a bit spurious in name.
You remember the McDonald's University, which was the staff training? It's not called a university anymore. But basically, what they've said is this London School of Innovation can teach postgrad qualifications. So they're aiming at the people in work looking to reskill or return to work. And they describe it as AI native. The teaching is done by
Right.
AI tutors. And then the humans focus on what they describe as active engagement, discussion, collaborative problem solving, the human side of education. And it's a partnership between an edtech company and a software company called Geeks Limited. That tells you a bit about their background. There's no lectures. You just go through your experience with an AI virtual tutor and then have human tutoring as well.
Just thinking about a bit of bias here. That's the second thing in the news you've read out where with the TED one and the Khan Academy, where there's been ed tech companies involved in sponsoring those things. So I'm seeing a lot of that at the minute where
Yes.
I'm not necessarily like a Microsoft or a Google or whatever, but that has happened, I'm sure. But where things and innovative things are happening and they've been almost like sponsored by an ed tech company who are trying to get into a particular industry. So always worth thinking about.
Yeah, and it's also interesting the approach to regulated and non-regulated. So TED, their institute is, well, we're going to start and then we're going to apply for accreditation. Whereas LSI, they've gone for accreditation first and now they're working out more around the product. The good news, Dan, is institute is not a regulated word. So we can create the Ray and Dan's Institute of AI tomorrow. We just can't create Ray and Dan's
the Institute
University
of AI is fine though. So those were kind of all connected together, I suppose. And with your Bob Dylan lyrics there, the other lyrics that Bob Dylan also said in that same song was, "Admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that it soon you'll be drenched to the bone." Something like that, anyway. So you can just imagine, or if you read the lyrics, the times they're changing, it is so apt for the AI era that you put that in the notes, and then I had a look in. Definitely listen to that song after the podcast today. It's amazing.
Okay, great. So the other thing I noticed was there was a new report out from Pearson and AWS, and they were surveying employers. And what they were trying to do was understand whether graduates are leaving university with the right AI skills. And what they said was nearly 80% of higher education leaders said that they were meeting employer expectations. Only 28% of employers said that universities were keeping up with AI-driven change. Only 14% of graduates say that they got to the right level of proficiency with AI to go and use it in a professional setting. It's a story we know. It's a fast-changing field. How do you keep up? How do you even understand what employers might want? It's just another data point to say, yes, there is pressure.
And it's good that Pearson are coming up with something now. AWS and Anthropic have done a heap as well. So the more of this research is coming up, the better. Now, the next one is really excellent. And I saw this myself on LinkedIn as I was scrolling through, and I know we put the link to the PDF in here, but this is from Dr. David Wiley, an associate professor from Marshall University in West Virginia. This is amazing.
Yeah, this is an open access book for teachers. It's been authored by a range of different teachers and researchers, and it brings together two things. One is research evidence on teaching and AI. So the kind of conversation we have when we talk about research papers. But then what it then does is bring together some good practice. So there's 14 chapters. Each has got a topic. So things like think, pair, share is a topic. The research that says how this works. And then a beautiful set of prompts about how you can use AI in that particular topic. So, for example, grading and feedback, some prompts in there for it, or blooms. How can you use AI to help you
and
to
the
follow
audio
Bloom's
is there
structure.
as well on the website, which is great. You can listen to it. It's really, really good. Really, really good.
I love it because of how practical it is. Because I think as a teacher, I'd have that there and go, yeah, okay, I want to do something in this area. And not only am I going to understand where it helps, I'm also going to have a few prompts that I can cut and paste, try them out, and then tailor.
It's even got something with maths assessment in there, which is quite interesting as well, because maths teachers struggle a little bit with some of the AI models that are available because they're not great sometimes at showing kind of latex math stuff. So really interesting. Really, really interesting.
Dan, we were both at the AI Summit last week in Australia. This has gone round the world. They've
Yep.
done this in a number of places. On stage, Microsoft made an announcement of a $25 billion investment in
Yeah.
AI in Australia. Now, on the day, there was just the big number. So I've spent some time trying to understand what that big number means. So basically, it's $25 billion worth of expenditure into data centers and AI infrastructure in Australia. So massive growth in the Azure cloud. You must be very happy, Dan.
The cloud is where the AI is kind of sitting, living and breathing, and lots of people needing models. Sure, lots of talk about sovereign AI. So always kind of useful when hyperscalers can bring this technology onshore.
In it, there was some skill stuff. So they said, we want to provide 3 million more Australians with workforce ready AI skills in 2 years' time. So including in that, they've announced 38 LinkedIn learning courses that are now free to people in Australia, a new partnership with Anyway. Some people might know Anyway as Year 13.
Right.
That's what they were previously called. And they have an AI-powered career coach. And so they've signed an agreement with government that means that will be made available to up to 1,000 Australian schools to help students get advice
That's
about
really good.
career
And
planning.
that tool is amazing. So, very, very happy about that. And see how the AI ready skills comes out. I know the team are working hard on that at the minute, but the more we can do with skilling, the better, I think. So skills, skills, skills.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because the number is 3 million Australians. Now, I set out a year ago when I set up my business, Dan, to say I want to educate 100,000 people in AI skills over 3 years. Turns out it took me 12 months to get to 100,000 people, partly thanks to the podcast. So it does depend on how you count these numbers. 3 million seems light because there are 26 million people in Australia, and I don't know how many of them need AI skills, but it's more than 10%. So yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking about an
and
even
I was
bigger
trying
number
to
in a couple of
squeeze
years'
in
time.
some of the skilling for teachers in there as well, but we didn't announce that yet. But something will be coming soon. But yeah, I'm a firm believer in the fact that skilling teachers and the teaching workforce is really important and is something we should be doing. We do a lot with the ESA, Microsoft, Google, and others. And I know we're ed tech companies, and I get that, but I think the more skilling stuff that people have got an opportunity to get, the better, including the LinkedIn courses, which are great.
I think the bigger problem today is not that there aren't AI courses, it's that there are too many and I don't know which ones to follow. Okay, so the last bit on learning, Dan, is Harvard. So Harvard have added mandatory AI courses to their English writing course. That seems to me like oil and water. Surely the two things don't mix, AI and a writing course. But what they've said is if you're a first year student coming in through Harvard University and you're doing the expository writing courses, which most freshers have to do, then they're going to teach you how AI models work, how it might affect education, i.e., don't let it switch your brain off. And they'll do things like bias. They'll teach you about privacy and copyright and the environmental impact of AI. So I think that's pretty good because it's helping students to understand the big picture around what is happening. Not just the should you use it to write or not, but all the kind of discussions about, well, how does it work and what is it doing?
And you should really have that, like it should be mandatory for every subject. I'm wondering why they put it in English, right? I suppose because of the fact that it is intrinsically a writing engine, I suppose. But the point being that it should be in every course these days. I haven't seen any courses in my uni yet about like I can go to find them, but there's nothing mandatory talking about that. I'm sure that will come. I suppose it also depends on what level of qualification you might be doing. Undergrad is really important, I suppose, to do that early.
I think the reason why it's not in every course is that to get people to sit down and agree what you should be teaching is a 2-year process, and we're still in the early days of AI. So I'm sure there are people still going through the process of saying, well, what do we need to teach students about AI?
Good point.
Okay,
Yay.
Dan, I found some research. Hey, this is research. We'll talk about 3 papers. The first one it's called Think, Pair, Chatbot Share.
Right.
AI facilitated peer learning in chemistry. So this came out from some people at University of Sydney and UNSW College. So Liam Scarrett, who's I think on the same floor as me today, produced this paper, which is why I know about it.
Yeah, there's like activities you should do in school, right? When you're teaching, you get somebody to do an activity and you think about that, and you work in a pair to see if your thinking is
Yep.
right, to take your pressure off, and then you share back as your little pair to your teacher to say, well, we think it's this.
Right. Okay. So it's a way of making you like apply a little bit of your knowledge, test a bit of your knowledge, but then
Yes.
build confidence
And have a bit of
in it.
discussion with
Yeah.
other people to see what they
So-
think.
Yeah. Great. So then this research is a new way of teaching, which is think, pair, chatbot share. So what you do is you do your own thinking. You then pair up with somebody, but then you are having AI as part of that conversation. Because the AI gives you some feedback
Yeah.
on your
That's
thinking.
interesting. I like that. Love that idea.
So they talked about it. It helps reduce the common mistakes. So, you're missing a key concept somewhere. It helps you spot those things. But here's the interesting thing. They found a downside to it as well. Fewer students actually stayed engaged with the exercise if they were pairing with a chatbot. And I wonder if that's a characteristic that we're going to see a lot. You think about tutoring. AI can tutor you, but if you're just talking to a robot, is it the same as talking to a person
Yeah,
that
that's
holds you
interesting.
to
I do
account?
like this entire theory, though. That sounds great because I think there is definitely legs in that. I'm just thinking about things that I've done myself when you do your own thinking and then you pass it across to AI. You go, oh, I didn't think of that. I missed that out. And sometimes when you do those think,
Yep.
pair, share activities, you can miss big things out, and then you've got to keep adding to that thought process. I think that's a really good idea. Love it.
Here's the kicker. If you are engaged with it, it helps you. But if you're not engaged with it, it doesn't. And it's easier to disengage when you're just ignoring your chatbot.
Okay. The next piece of research you got here is identifying what our students have learned, a framework for practical assessment validation.
Okay, so again, people we know. So this came from Tim Fawns at Monash, who I run into quite often at conferences, David Bowd at UTS, Phil
Deakin.
Dawson, who we've had on the podcast from Deakin. So this is the higher education world. And what their argument is often as schools and universities, they set off to measure something and they think they're measuring it and they're measuring what students have learned, but what they're actually doing is measuring something else. For example, if you're assessing oral communication skills, perhaps the best way to assess that is not asking you to write an explanation of communication principles.
I got you.
Yeah. It's actually to get you to explain something orally. So it's basically saying if you over rely on one type of assessments, like essays, then that becomes an issue. And so they break it down. They produce this 4 Ps framework.
No.
We haven't got enough frameworks, Sam. So it's 4 Ps to help teachers design better assessments that genuinely get to the act of, can we get the students to show us what they can do and what they know? And it's really easy. It's like, can you assess the product, i.e. what you make? Can you assess the process, how you made it? Can you assess the performance? Like if I'm assessing your oral assessment, am I going to see you talking? So what you do. And then lastly, can I assess your practice, i.e. how do you behave in a real situation?
That's really good, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. And each one of those gives a different perspective on learning. So none of them are perfect on their own, but you start to put them together.
Phil Dawson's like Swiss cheese thing appearing in there. Yeah. I love that. And that fits into like product-based like learning and all of that, project-based learning. So that's very cool.
We've talked about Swiss cheese and not explained it for a couple of episodes. So Swiss cheese is you do multiple assessments, and because the holes don't all line up, as a student, you can't get through all of those with no knowledge. This is slightly different. This is basically saying we've got 4 different styles of assessment in order to do it. But it's the same idea. We'll assess in multiple ways, different attributes in order to be able to build
that's
confidence.
Great. The next one is the final one for today. Using generative artificial intelligence to reimagine feedback in higher education, a collaborative autoethnography.
What this did was say, can you chat to a chatbot that then writes the comments for the students? I think I saw Travis Smith
Yeah.
doing this kind of thing ages ago with OneNote, where you're marking a piece of student's work, and instead of spending time writing or typing notes, you just hit record and said, this is great, but you could do with a better structure for your paragraphs.
Automate.
But in this case, what it does is it goes from the audio into producing a written comment that the student receives. They built a proof of concept. It was a bit clunky. So teachers complained that it took them longer to do because of the editing that they had to do to it. There were some technical issues. But I think if you're going to do something like this, it should be faster. It shouldn't be slower. What they said was, one really surprising thing they found was it felt different to the teachers to mark the work. It felt different. And so when you're typing a bunch of comments and you've got a class of 30, that can be tricky. If you're just recording a bunch of comments for a class of 30, it feels less tiring. And so that made a difference to teachers. So I think it's an interesting experiment. Obviously, they haven't got the perfect answer, but it does support that thing of, okay, if you still believe that teachers should provide every bit of feedback to a student, you can still use AI to, for example, to go from a spoken comment to a written one.
Doctors have done this for a long time, haven't they? Where they'd see a patient and they kind of say, they'd send a dictation tape to a medical secretary to say, okay, I've just seen Ray. These are the top 3 things. Please write this, 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 and this. People still do that in multiple jobs these days where you dictate to your PA or EA or whatever, and then they will embellish that. But then on the other side of it, I think, well, if I'm recording audio to Ray for feedback anyway, you may as well just give him that feedback. Comes up to that silly adage that I use in some of my presentations where you've got the AI saying, I've got 5 bullet points and I've just made a big document out of it. And then somebody reading something and going, I've got a big page and I've made 5 bullet points out of it. You're like, where is it in the middle there? So yeah, it is an interesting one though.
Yeah, and I suppose it's a demonstration of the journey that we are on, which is we know things can be better. We're not quite sure which way to go. And so all of these experiments tell us, we learned this thing is positive and this thing is negative. As we start to pile those papers together, we'll start to realize what the route through it is. The North Star is we want to improve the feedback that students get. What we don't know is where are the roads and rails to get to that North Star. Over time.
Well, that was brilliant. Thanks for pulling those research articles together today. It's good to get back on the research because there's lots happening. And thank you very much for that, Ray. And I hope our listeners found a useful update for this week's News in Tech and AI in Education. Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Dan.